Canes Insight Daily Podcast powered by Anajar and Levine. We're live. It's Wednesday. It's 10 a.m. We're doing a little morning live here with your Q&A just to talk about whatever's on your mind with respect to the Miami Hurricanes. Players are on campus. They're working out. Got some new arrivals on campus. We'll talk about those. Get ready for a big recruiting weekend this weekend and really just answer any questions you guys have on the team. So get in the stream. Ask the questions there, Twitter, however you want. Go ahead and let us know what's on your mind. Let me start with just some initial observations, Pete, because I saw a picture going around of Jordan Lyle, the running back, at a St. Thomas Aquinas High School. As a Catholic school, he doesn't get to enroll before spring. He graduated normal and is now on campus. So this is the first glimpse that coaches have of him, aside from his high school stuff. There you see him looking a lot bigger than people expected. And I mentioned this numerous times on the podcast. When I saw him in spring, he was a lot bigger than I thought. I thought he'd be kind of like your, average size back, but he may actually be a big back at the college level. I heard people talking about him, not saying he's fast or as good or anything else. Don't take this and get carried away, but just his build and kind of the way he looked running Willis McGahee. Not saying he's running a 4.2, not saying he's going to run for however many yards McGahee ran for 2002, not saying he's going to be a first-round pick, run for 10,000 almost yards in the pros. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that people, when they saw him physically moving around, running around on Green Tree, they said, wow, the visual looks like Willis McGahee. Just to give you a size comp and a movement comp for Jordan Lyle from someone who was there. This is not my comparison. This is someone who is a football person, not just like a fan off the street. So Lyall is generating a lot of positive buzz, and he is someone that coaches expect to contribute early this season, similar to Mark Fletcher. Pete, why don't you pull up Jordan Lyle's senior highlights while you're over there on Huddle? While I break it down just a little bit. So Lyall, of course, this is a Ohio State commit for a long time in the process, ended up flipping to Miami late in the process. Timetable actually very similar to a Mark Fletcher, Broward back, private school, same kind of timeline. And with Mark Fletcher on the shelf and you want to take it slow with his foot injury, Lyall is a guy who I think you could see play right away. And he's someone that Miami always liked. But from talking to people, Miami's made a big emphasis on watching senior highlights for players. They like to see not just senior highlights, senior game film, getting to see these guys as seniors, tracking their game to game, trying to see who's making a leap. And Jordan Lyle, you see his senior highlights here, is someone that when they took a look at what he was doing as a senior, they had him already here as an offerable kid. He went even higher on the priority list. Finished with on the On3 rankings. This is On3 national rankings as the number one running back nationally. Again, On3, who like to do things a little different with their scouting services. I think they do some really cool stuff as far as using NFL data to figure out how they want to rank guys. They had Jordan Lyle as the number one back in the country, and Miami they already liked him. They already wanted him, but he became a super high priority when he had his senior season. You're watching some of the reasons why as you look at his senior clips. The tackle breaking, I watched him in the state championship game. Very good balance, very good instincts, great vision, just a pure running back. He can catch the ball as well. No frills. It's not like he's like a track star you're turning into a running back, although there is certainly a place for guys like that, like a Chris Johnson. He's going to be a very valuable member of the team. But Lyle's more of your traditional, just good, solid back that knows how to run. And again, I think he's bigger than people think. So talking about him a lot because I'm not hearing a lot of talk about him as a day one player, but I think you could see an impact from Jordan Lyle similar to Mark Fletcher last year, where he was one of the best running backs by the end of the year in the ACC, I thought.
I don't know, guys. We're getting Willis McGahee comparisons on May 29th, so I already know the preseason pod is going to be a fun one this year from D. But no, I mean, we're watching the highlights and going back to the picture, D, you see the thick lower half there. And that's the thing with some of these young backs that come in. Can they, and with Lyall, he's not going to be asked to be sustaining a load, hopefully, right? Because you have Damian Martinez, Fletcher, as he continues to get healthy, and some of the other guys in the backfield here. But I think he's someone who definitely down the line could be a legit number one back. Just looking at him, I mean, some guys come in, D, and right off the bat, you just know that they can be a big part of the offense. They can be a piece of the backfield, and they have certain skill sets, but they may not be have that ceiling as a number one back. I think Jordan Lyle, it does have that ability, no doubt about it.
No, look, and again, that was something that I just am repeating. I'm not saying it myself. I do see some similarities. I think the big difference is McGahee was like a 4.3 kind of speed guy at his size, which is unique. I don't think Lyall has that sort of pure speed, but I see some similarities in terms of he's kind of a straight, his back straight when he runs. He's not someone who necessarily is going to put his shoulder down and plow through you, but he is very tough and physical with that style. And he gets upfield, very explosive first step. You see, I mean, he can do the spin moves. He can do all that, probably a little more fluid maybe than McGahee in certain respects. But he's really an upfield runner. He wants to get downhill and doesn't waste a lot of time doing it. So again, someone that I'm hearing a lot of positive buzz around. Even before those pictures went around social media, I was hearing a lot of positive stuff about Jordan Lyle. So those pictures where you see the size of this kid, he's going to be an instant impact player. Let's get to some questions here. I got Canes Cat 305 was asking about Sesu, the Bishop Gorman offensive lineman, the center, that he said that he heard that we were cooling on him and then we heated up with him. I want to just confirm, Miami never cooled on this kid. They always thought he was a great player. The communication died down really, I think more probably on his end than anything, but Miami's always thought he was a great player and they really want him bad. And after seeing him in spring, they thought he was one of the best players they saw in spring. So Miami would love to add this kid at center. I don't think it's in their plans to necessarily take a center every year. They took Nico Francovilli last year, who I actually thought looked pretty good, Nino Francovilli, who I thought looked pretty good in spring. I don't think they're planning on taking a center every year, but a special kid like this out of Bishop Gorman, they'll take him. Guys can play guard, whatever. But when you have a special guy like this in the potential fold, you go after him. Still a long way to go. That's still a battle that's ongoing. But the fact that there's interest, he's super talented, tested really well athletically, comes from a program, Bishop Gorman, where you got RB Jordan, NFL player. You just got your best player in spring as far as young players, Elijah Lofton. So a lot of pedigree with this player. Love to get Polynesians at Miami. You know my stance with that. And I think he's a guy to watch as an anchor for this class going forward.
Question from Chi-Town Kane. Hey, fellas, hope Memorial Day weekend was good. What are the rumblings that Miami's 2025 DB class is about to start rolling?
This weekend, you have two very important defensive backs on campus. You have Aiden Anding out of Ruston, Louisiana. You have Andrew Purcell out of Enterprise, Alabama. Both of those guys are guys Miami would love to add. Multi-sport guys. Both of those guys are basketball players. Purcell does everything on the football field. Very versatile. Anding as well. And he's really new to football and doing so well, excelling in the camp circuit. I think those are guys where their recruiting rankings probably not up to speed with where they are as prospects. It'll even out by the end of the year. Purcell's already moving up as he gets bigger offers. I think Anding is as well because of his camp performances. So maybe that's what's being referred to. Those are two very important prospects that are visiting this weekend that Miami would love to crank up the pressure on and try to land. You also have DJ Pickett, who is going to be a longer-term recruitment, but Miami's in a very good spot there. A lot of ties there. He could come in and play right away with his size and speed at cornerback, which is where they're recruiting him. Bryce Fitzgerald, the Columbus product. Miami loves him. Tested out of this world in the offseason, a basketball player as well as a football player. I keep mentioning multi-sport, track, athletic testing. These are things that to me are missing from our defensive backfield right now. We need more guys who can play both ways, who can make plays in multiple facets of the game, who play multiple sports, who test out of this world from an athletic standpoint in our defensive backfield. We are not athletic enough in the back, and we haven't been for a while. A guy like Purcell, a guy like Aiden Anding, DJ Pickett, Ben Hanks, who's a great baseball player on top of testing out of this world and being a great cover corner. I mentioned Bryce Fitzgerald as a basketball player who tested well. And of course, DJ Pickett plays receiver, plays corner, track guy with a 10-6, 100 meters. That's what you need at the defensive back position. I've already talked about Anding and his basketball background. So long way of saying, and I think I mentioned this on an earlier podcast, if the priority was offensive line year one with Francis Mauigoa, Noah Sampson, and all those guys. And the priority was D tackle last year. Justin Scott, Artavius Jones, Armando Blunt, Marquise Lightfoot, et cetera, on the defensive line. This year's about skill. We'll talk about some of the wide receivers, but defensive backs are at a premium. You need athletes. I mentioned a bunch. Andrew Purcell and Aiden Anding on campus this weekend. Huge visit weekend for the Canes.
Question here. Big Go asking who's the new portal DB in the mix. Is there even one?
I think if Miami takes another defensive back, last I heard, and I haven't spoken to anybody since late last week, you could see a situation similar to Cormani McClain where maybe it's a walk-on situation. That's something to monitor. Again, I know there's some buzz. I'll check in on it. I've heard the buzz from the outside. I haven't spoken with anybody directly on it. I know Miami really wanted to land a nickel corner to finish off the portal class. That's really the only part of the portal class that they didn't land the top of the priority list. I mean, they landed their top quarterback. They landed their top running back. They landed their top receiver. They landed their, really three guys, a defensive tackle that they wanted really badly, linebacker that they targeted, corner Deani Hill that they targeted. So they got the guys they wanted. Tyler Barron, give me a break as a defensive end. So they landed Elijah Alston, premium guys all across their shopping list that we laid out for you at the beginning of the portal season. The missing piece is that second DB, that guy that can play nickel, line up man-to-man coverage, and they can make do with what they have. If they can get someone in as sort of like a walk-on, I think that could be something to keep an eye on. Maybe another name emerges. I will check in on that. But I know that is the one area where maybe the portal didn't hit their shopping list on the portal.
Shout out to the almost 300 who are watching live right now. If you're on YouTube, remember to hit that like button on the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're on Twitter, go over to YouTube, check out the CanesInSight page on YouTube. And we do this every day. The daily show, we do this live Q&A at least once a week here. So D, I'll let you pick any other question here.
Yeah, he's got Life's Good here. He's got a question.
Yeah.
So he wants to know, what are the chances that Zaquan Patterson ends up as our starting nickel? I don't see that because I think the man-to-man coverage is going to be the weakness for Zaquan Patterson. He can cover tight ends and bigger receivers, but you're going to have to live with some of the grabbiness and some of the stuff that comes with being a big, young defensive back. He's very physical. He wants to do right. He had a great spring, good attitude. I think he's someone who's going to play a big role. I would compare him as a freshman in terms of just the role to James Williams as a true freshman. He ended up playing a ton. If you go back and look at James Williams' freshman year, and he wasn't here in spring, I don't believe. I think it was a Heritage kid that came late. So James Williams ended up playing a lot. I could see similar from Zaquan Patterson. He was here in spring, so he's an advantage over James Williams. I think he's a better tackler than James Williams just because he's built lower to the ground. He's still big as a safety, 6'2", he'll be 200 plus. But I think his ability to get low and strike is superior to James Williams. 6'5" was a little tougher for him in the open field. So I think Zaquan Patterson, the physicality, both as a tackler, as a blitzer, is ahead of James Williams, but I can see a similar role for him as a freshman. Nickel, though, I think is going to be more of a cornerback. One of the guys in that corner mix, like a Damari Brown, a Darryl Porter, someone like that playing in the nickel, or a Mish Powell coming down and playing nickel.
Shout out to our boy Wes Endzone. Nick was on the show a couple of days ago breaking down some of the intricacies of Miami's blitz schemes last year, differences between zone pressure and man pressure. Question.
Yep.
Question here from Trokane31. How come people think the offensive line will take a step back from last year? And we kind of spoke about this the other day on our show, D.
Yeah, and if you didn't see that, we went through some of the question marks for next season, coming out of the portal, coming out of recruiting, coming out of spring. Talked about nickel corner, which we just got to. Talked about left guard, which is kind of what this question is getting at. I am not someone who thinks the offensive line is going to take a step back. I do not expect that. I think this is year 3 of Cristobal and Mirabal. They've been coaching it a certain way. Usually you get better and better. They certainly took a big leap last year. And to me, the reason people say you're going to take a step back is because you lose Matt Lee, who was probably drafted lower than he should have been just because of durability stuff. Didn't matter for the Canes. He played every game. And then Javion Cohen, undrafted, again, probably because of off-the-field stuff. I expect him to make a roster, and he's a good player. To me, you bring back really your 3 best offensive linemen by a high margin. So if those guys are day 3 type picks, Matt Lee and Javion Cohen, again, very good players. Cooper, Mawanoa, Jalen Rivers, to me, are day 1, day 2 type picks. That's my opinion. This is where they'll end up being. They're smart. They're physical, extremely physical. They're big. They're athletic. They have versatility. Cooper can play outside if he needs to. Rivers play anywhere. Mawanoa can play inside, probably his best position at the NFL level. So you bring back your 3 best guys. You didn't lose any of your 3 best. And those guys all have upside potential. Mawanoa was a freshman last year, true freshman. He's only going to get better. Rivers, in spring, from what I saw and talking to people, they felt he took a huge leap as a left tackle. They think he's going to be one of the best players in the conference, period. And then Inez Cooper might be the best offensive lineman on the team. Pete, you remember when we sat down with Cam Ward after the spring game, the first name out of his mouth was Inez Cooper. So to me, those are elite offensive linemen. So top of the country type guys. So if you got 3 elite offensive linemen, including the 2 tackle positions, you're cooking with gas. Go ahead, Pete.
Well, and there's a comment here, the follow-up comment from Cliff D said, O-line lost 2 players to the pros. They won't be as good as last year. My thing's this, D, and you went over it. There's more than just the talent reasons why guys were drafted, whether they're drafted or in Cohen's case wasn't drafted, but it's not like you're replacing 2 top 100 type picks at that position, at each of those spots, right? So Lee was one of the best centers in the country. Cohen, great career at Bama, had a really solid year at Miami, but neither of these guys were top 2 or 3 round picks. So it's not like these are irreplaceable guys at those spots.
Yeah. And look, Zach Carpenter at center, I think, is getting a bad rap from what I've seen in spring. This guy is going to be more than solid. He was an all Big Ten honorable mention player at Indiana, who did not have 2 great players playing next to him like he will have here. He's a little bigger and more physical than Matt Lee, not as athletic, but I think this is a guy who's going to be more than fine. He'll be in a camp somewhere, and he's going to be tough. And on some of those double teams with those big guards, he's going to cause a lot of problems for you. Left guard, we talked about on the show. We'll see how that plays out. But you have a lot of talented players in the mix between Samson Okunlola, Matt McCoy, Markel Bell, Tommy Kinsler. These are super talented, big athletic dudes. Maybe one of those guys takes a tackle spot and moves in Mawanoa or Rivers to left guard. Probably more likely Mawanoa. The more I watch Mawanoa, I went back and watched a lot of just straight offensive line game film this past week. Mawanoa really, with his ability in space, he's a good tackle, but he could be just an elite guard. So what if Markel Bell moves him inside, or McCoy moves him inside, or Kinsler moves him inside, or Samson is left guard, who's a 5-star? There's going to be a lot of talent on this line. You've recruited well. You bring back your top 3 guys. I expect this to be one of the best lines in the nation, period. And by the way, one thing I noticed when I went back and watched this offensive line film, our running backs did them 0 favors. I mean, we knew this. We've talked about it on the show, but to go back and watch it, Chaney did not do much. There wasn't blocked for him. Parrish was more slippery than Chaney, but he wasn't breaking tackles and he wasn't exploding for extra yards. A.J. Allen was hurt. He had some nice moments, particularly in the Clemson game, but, again, wasn't creating a whole lot other than the time he leapfrogged the dude. Damian Martinez behind this offensive line is going to make them look even better. Cam Ward behind this offensive line is going to make them look even better. So I expect this offensive line to be in contention for the Joe Moore Award, and I guarantee you the expectations internally are not for this unit to take a step back.
Question here from our boy Ulysses Perez from Closure Investigative Agency. Do you think the new tandem at safety will be better than Cam Kitchens and James Williams? Less hero ball? This is a tough one for me, Ulysses, because look, we understand Cam had his moment against Georgia Tech. There were some inconsistencies last year on film for him, but we're still talking about a top 100 pick, which I use that phrase top 100 pick because that's not everyone's a first round pick, but if you're a top 100 pick, that is, you're considered a guy who is supposed to step in and be a starter immediately or a big contributor as a rookie, right? So Cam, that's going to be a big loss. There's no way to sugarcoat that one. Williams, I'm less worried about the production, replacing his production on the field with some of the young guys, such as a Bobby Pruitt, who's going to be playing a similar role, I think, that he played last year. And in coverage, listen, his numbers, at least on PFF coverage-wise, were solid, and he was a good guy to match up with with tight ends and bigger weapons in that respect. But I think there's enough pieces to replace that production from him, at least.
Yeah, I agree. Cam Kitchens is better than any safety on the roster. So that'll be a loss. James Williams, I could definitely see him having a great career in the pros as a linebacker. Ray Armstrong, who is less talented in my view than James Williams, played a ton of games in the pros at linebacker. James Williams, we all know, should have made that move earlier, but you were weak at safety. Similar story with Ray Armstrong. You didn't recruit safety well enough. The kid wanted to play safety. He kind of had you over a barrel. Not good for anybody, in my opinion, but that's what it was. Like Pete mentioned, I think you could replace James Williams fully actualized as a linebacker? I don't know. We might look down the road and say this guy was a hell of a player in the pros that was on our roster. We didn't get that much out of him. But as far as what he gave you as a safety, I agree with Pete. I think Jaden Harris can come in there and tackle it even better because he's lower to the ground. He's faster. I think he's not going to give you the penalties. I like James Williams' attitude and his energy and his passion for the Canes, but he did hurt you a bit with the penalties. I think Jaden Harris will be a little smarter than that. So good player at safety, James Williams. Not everything that he could be as a football player. You can replace his production at safety. Cam will be a loss. Mish Powell will give you maybe 80% of what Cam gave you, but I think Cam, with his physicality, has an edge over Mish Powell and is also probably a better ball hawk. Mish Powell is a better cover guy, though.
I think for me, man, it's the depth there that concerns me more than anything, D, because again, I look at every position and you just almost assume that one or two of those guys are going to go down over the course of the season, right? Whether it's for a week or longer. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the game. And does a Jadis Richard maybe have to play some safety at some point too, right? Because he has done that in the past. He has the physical skill set to do it. So there's different things to look at here, but I think that's the beauty, at least, of some of the guys that they've brought in, is that they do have that positional versatility.
And two good things happened in spring on the depth side. Zaquan Patterson enrolled, stayed healthy, had a productive spring. Cam and James Williams, both of those guys played a lot as true freshmen. I think you'll see that from Zaquan Patterson. And then also Markeith Williams, very talented, always been considered very talented, but sort of mercurial as far as you don't know where he's going to be. He has gotten more disciplined, had a very good spring. Looks like he'll be a solid depth guy at safety. I heard he also can play corner as well. That's how good of a cover guy he is. So maybe he's your backup to the Mish Powell role in case Mish Powell goes down, which you hope doesn't happen because he's a very important player on this team.
Mark McC asks how we are feeling about special teams. D, I was just telling you the other day how lucky Miami's been to have the Borregales brothers the last, 6 years here, I think, right?
Yeah, look, I feel better about special teams than anything. Let's just call it what it is. You have Borregales, who is one of the best kickers, if not the best kicker in the country. So that's a pretty good place to start. He kicks off and he kicks the field goals. He's great at both. Dylan Joyce made some freshman All-America list as that latest, Australian rugby style punter. He fit in great behind Headley, who is now in the NFL. Doesn't have the personality and all that stuff of Headley, the physical, whatever, but he was very good. So really, you have not missed a beat in the kicking game. We were very good on special teams last year by every metric. I think our coverage units will get better because we've recruited better body types, better athletes as far as the linebacker position. Plus, we kept some guys that are good at that. Chase Smith, very good. One of the few Manny Diaz holdovers. He's very good on special teams. Bobby Washington, you could see him really flourishing on special teams. Some of those guys that you signed in recent years, I think will fit there. Bobby Pruitt. You're going to have good coverage units. And then to me, the real X factor with the special teams is the kicking game. Can we get, or the return game, I should say, can we get more out of that? Restrepo, I think the one thing that's really holding him back from being an NFL type guy, I think he will make the NFL, but the lack of punt return hurts him. He's a much better offensive player than a Braxton Berrios, but he doesn't give you the punt return. So punt return is wide open. Is a Ray Joseph going to step up? Is a Robbie Washington going to step up? Is someone else, JoJo Trader, Nye Carr, Chris Johnson? A lot of candidates there, Robert Stafford, to potentially do some stuff in the return game. Hard to tell without the live bullets. That's a position where you might think you have a guy coming out of camp and then a couple bad reads on the punts and you're playing the next guy. So we'll see what we have in the return game. I think we've recruited better athletes in the last couple of classes as far as young players. So you expect that to go up a little bit just because of the recruiting depth.
You mentioned Robbie and Bobby a moment ago, D, but Kane, Idaho asks, will Robbie and Bobby Washington get adequate playing time this year to hopefully keep them from transferring next year? Well, first of all, look, I don't think Mario is in the business of just giving these guys playing time just to keep them from transferring. But I will say Robbie and Mario's also not in the business of handing out compliments to the media about players if he doesn't actually mean it. He did say near the end of spring there that Robbie Washington was ready to help this team, win games, right? So I certainly think he'll have a role. It's very tough to predict at both receiver and linebacker, which is where Bobby plays, how a lot of those snaps are going to turn out. But I think both of them definitely help themselves in the spring.
Yeah, no question about it. I think the idea is to win the ACC. That's what they're focused on, not keeping any players. But those guys have a lot of talent. I still think Robbie would be a first-round corner potentially if he took to the position well. But he's focused on receiver, made a lot of plays in the second half of spring at receiver. Very explosive. Bobby Washington, the guy looks like $1 million. He legitimately runs a 4.4, and he's like 6'3", probably 220 at this point. He's exactly what you want physically. He makes a lot of big plays. Consistency from both those guys is what you want. But I like them both because they're fast, they're tough. They have big play instincts. I think special teams for sure with both of those guys, and then potentially they can get their way onto the field on offense and defense, respectively. By the way, I just want to shout out Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. I didn't do it in the intro. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733, and take back control of your life with Anijar and Levine. Also got to shout out Caneswear. Panthers won yesterday. Get your Panthers gear at Caneswear. It's not just the Canes, but they have the best cane selection also. Caneswear and Davie or Caneswear.com. The absolute best for Miami sports fans and certainly Miami Hurricane fans. All right.
D, I wanted to get to our boy Ulysses again. Appreciate the tip here. Is Deani Hill a slot or outside corner? If he's a slot, will he be better than Corey Couch?
First of all, thank you, Ulysses. Pete, get the CIA read ready because our man Ulysses is the man. I'll kick it to you after this. But to answer his question, I think Deani Hill is more of an outside guy. I heard he looked really long and fast workout-wise. You don't know about these guys that just got here as far as the football side. You can watch the tape, so you know a little bit more because he's a portal guy as opposed to a recruit. But when I asked about, hey, how's Deani Hill look, the first thing I heard was he can run. So the length, the speed, I think outside is probably more where he's going to live. But him being a good outside corner gives you more flexibility to move maybe someone else inside. So that's why you wanted to add more corners, regardless of where they played in this portal class. He's somebody that the staff's familiar with. Again, the length, the speed was productive. Finished the season really strong for Marshall. We had a whole Deani Hill episode you could check out in the YouTube archives. As far as we talked to a Marshall beat writer who talked about Hill's emergence and how he could potentially be an NFL guy like some of the NFL guys that they've had in recent years. Chevis Jackson, of course, was his coach at Marshall at the corner position. Lance Gidger recruited him. So a lot of familiarity, and they decided that this is the guy that we needed. And the early impressions, the speed has translated, which is always important when you're talking about G5 guys going to the Power 4 level. So Pete, give CIA some love.
Yeah, and I'll do that in just a second. Indeed, we also had the Marshall reporter on who said Hill was a very willing tackler, very good tackler in the open field. So to me, that's a big part. You saw both Jaden Davis and Daryl Porter last year, their ability to tackle, and that's Coach Guidry. It's a prerequisite for him to play at that position. You have to. So want to give a shout out. Thank you again, Ulysses. Closure Investigative Agency. Is your ex-partner failing to pay child support? You deserve better. Let Closure Investigative Agency help you. Let's go get your money. Background checks, cheating spouses, corporate investigations, insurance investigations, legal investigations, employee theft investigations, domestic services, missing persons, and more. Closure Investigative Agency. Contact them at 561-437-6080 or info@ciagency.net. 5-star Google rated, and the entire state of Florida is covered.
That's why they paid Pete the big bucks. All right, Cesar Iglesias is a question I want to answer. Pull that one up. There, go ahead and ask it.
So Caesar says, so with college, NCAA agreeing to pay the players, where does that put Miami with the new facility? That's still in a recruit's reason to go where they might go.
No. I think facilities are way down on the list, in my opinion. Almost irrelevant. Recruits are going to go where they're going to go because of the football aspect, meaning the on-field performance, the coaches, the relationship with the coaches, where Cristobal comes in because he's such a hard recruiter as a head coach, and then the money. And colleges have agreed to revenue sharing. That's way down the road. NIL is still the name of the game. It is right now, and the settlement's not really going to change that. Who knows what the future holds, but certainly right now for this class, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere for the following classes, NIL is the name of the game. So if you want to worry about how you can help recruits, CanesConnection.com, promo code CIS, get 20% off your first month. Get access to a private chat. I'm doing one next Thursday. We'll be able to answer questions that I can't even answer here and be a little more candid with the absolute freshest info. I will talk to somebody literally right before the call and give you the freshest info and answer your questions on that if you're a Canes Connection member. But yes, Caesar, that wasn't just to do the plug. That's the true answer is money is the name of the game when it comes to these players, on top of the football reasons. Facilities, in the olden days when you couldn't pay money over the table, that was more important. Now I would say way down the list. Appreciate you, Matt Owen. Let's see.
Got a question here from Loose Screws asking, do we have a plan to use Ray Joseph properly? I'll say this. A lot of people didn't realize, and we talked about it with Ray. He came on the show. When he came to Miami, he hadn't played all that much. He had receiver, right? He hadn't played all that much, where he had to actually run routes. A lot of it was just getting him the ball, jet sweeps, getting him the ball out of the backfield, quick screens. So there's a lot to the position, and the learning curve, I think, was steeper than people realized. But knowing how hard Ray works, just seeing how much weight he's put on, I think he's just naturally going to make plays and be part of the game plan. You saw, obviously, fans would have probably wanted them to get Brashard Smith the ball a little bit more last year, but some of the ways that they did try to get him the ball, I think Ray slides right into that spot this season. Yeah,
and the plays you had for Brashard Smith last year, I don't think that playbook goes away, right? They still have that whole that arsenal. I think Ray Joseph is similar to Brashard Smith for the reasons Pete mentioned. He's really more of a running back / receiver, which Brashard Smith was as well. I think that's a natural fit. Some of those plays, you could do more than that. But really, I think Cam Ward, number one, is going to spread the ball more than TVD did. I went yesterday. I was watching Cam Ward against Wisconsin, which if you want to see a great Cam Ward game, look at Washington State offense versus Wisconsin on YouTube. You'll see the whole game of Washington State against Wisconsin. And Ward hit 10 different receivers. He was spreading the ball to everybody, check downs, really just finding the open man. So Ray is going to find the ball just naturally in the flow of the offense when he's on the field, and he's just going to have to catch the ball and make plays when he has it, which he's capable of doing. But he will have opportunities just from the flow of the offense. I think the Brashard Smith stuff suits him as well. And then return game, that's where he could really excel, because I think there's a dying need on this team for a reliable, smart number one punt returner, which Ray is a very smart guy who can then make stuff happen with it once he catches it. I don't know why Restrepo was never able to find that niche. You would think he'd be a natural for it. He was not. Ray has an opportunity to do that. So it's really in his hands.
Interesting question here from New King God. If you had to switch one position group each week, you play an opponent just for that week, which position group would you switch with Florida? And so on. So it's tough to go through the entire schedule, but it's an interesting question that we've kind of been debating somewhat, in terms of Florida's personnel against Miami's personnel. We've done a podcast on it, and just looking at the returning production, albeit a lot of it wasn't necessarily at Miami. It's tough to legitimately look at a certain group for Florida and say they have the better group.
here's what I'll say about this question. And you're going to say I'm a homer, but I'm going to give you the facts to back it up. Miami's going to be favored in pretty much every game they play before the season. We know that Vegas, before the season, things change. Miami tends to underperform historically the last 20 years. I get all that. But Miami's going to be the most talented team on the field pretty much every game they play. I believe every game they play this particular season until you get to the postseason. So I don't think I'm overrating Miami's position groups from a talent standpoint in that respect. Florida, to me, they can definitely beat Miami the first week. They're going to be a dangerous team. It's college football. Miami hasn't earned that respect, number one. They're not in Alabama or Georgia that's done it consistently. That's number one. Number two, opening game, rival, talented team on the other side, talented to a certain degree. It's always going to be a risky game. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying there. But if you're looking at their positions, I don't like any of their positions compared to Miami. Because I think if you look at where they're strong at quarterback, in my opinion. Cam Ward's better than Graham Mertz. They're pretty good at receiver. I think Wilson would start for us, but as a unit, I think Miami has a better unit. Badger's a good player. Florida's good at receiver. Miami's, I think, better at receiver, deeper. Their defense was horrible last year. I mean, their defense last year was one of the worst in the country, and they lost their best player to Ole Miss, Princely, the edge rusher. So, I mean, our defensive backs are the weakness of the team. I don't think Florida's defensive backs are much better. That's why they took a desperation play with Cormani McClain. If you're just talking about the schedule, I'd say certainly Florida State, when you get to that game, I'd rather have Florida State's defensive backs than Miami's defensive backs, right? But I don't know. I mean, partly because the schedule's not that good. I'm not sure, do we play North Carolina this year? You could talk about Amari and Hampton versus Damian Martinez, but they're pretty close and Miami has more depth. I like Miami's position groups against their competition this year. I think aside from the secondary being a little closer to average than the other groups, I think Miami's going to have the better roster than pretty much every team they play this year.
Dudu has the question, how many commitments do you think we'll get coming out of this weekend's numerous visitors?
We got some commitments already that are visiting, so you got to take those guys off the board. Your TK Mwex, Mo, I'm going to learn how to pronounce his name before this podcast season is done. Brock Schott and Luka Gilbert, the two tight ends, coming from Indiana and Ohio, respectively. I think they're going to get a rude awakening with how hot it is lately. It has been like cooking if you're not in the South Florida area. It's been like unseasonably hot, even for this time when it's usually pretty hot. It's been really hot. So those guys will get a nice awakening there. I don't know. Commitments. I think you might get guys that do commit out of this group, but like commit on the first, on Monday or Tuesday. I'm not sure, just because it's the first visit for a lot of kids. They're going to want to take their visits. They're going to want to feel out NIL. If you remember last year, it's not like we were getting a ton of commits, boom, right off the visit weekends. We'd get them more down the road. So I think you might get guys in this class that you look back and say, these guys were uncommitted when they came to Miami on May 30th, and now they're in the class. But I don't think it's going to be like the next day.
And you got to remember, you kind of alluded to it there, D, but a lot of these big-time prospects that Miami's going after, they have to figure out the NIL situation as well, and that sometimes takes, time in itself. So
let's see James Smith here. He's got a good question.
How do Porter and Brown stack up as starting cornerbacks with other ACC corners?
It's a great question. I would say I've been studying the ACC because it's the downtime. So you just watch a lot of games and try to catch up and be able to answer questions like this. I would say Florida State defensive backfield, very impressed by them. Clemson, even though they lost Nate Wiggins, they have very good defensive backs. They got AJ Terrell's brother. They got other guys that can really play. In terms of Virginia Tech, they're traditionally good in the defensive backfield. I think they expect to be good at corner this year as well. But really, Darryl Porter had a very good year in the ACC last year. He did not get tested a lot for the Miami Hurricanes. And Damari Brown was sort of a late arrival to the party, but he's so explosive, such a big tackler. He's smart. He can play corner. His dad played corner at the college level. His brother played corner. So he's a schooled corner on top of the size and the physicality. I would say right now you're projecting with Damari Brown, so it's hard to say, but I think you could see this being, an above average ACC corner group, especially when you throw Jadis Richard in the mix. But I think Florida State they're more impressive to me right now. They have depth as well. And Clemson, those are the two that when I just watch these other teams, I say those are where you're looking at the top of the ACC.
Again, remember to like this video and subscribe to the Canes Insight channel. We have the Canes Insight daily podcast every day, and we do these live Q&As at least once a week. Take a few more questions here before we wrap things up. Matthew Owen asks, who will be the most improved player on offense and defense? I don't know if you have your answer ready, but I have to think about this one for a second.
All right, I'll let you think about that one. Make sure you get your answer in. I will say, if Elijah Arroyo counts, because he's been injured, I think Arroyo will be the guy that you say, wow, this guy's better than we thought. In terms of just old-fashioned improvement, like a guy that didn't get hurt or anything like that, that's just getting better, Isaiah Horton on offense, he looked like a whole new guy, changed his number, changed his body. He looked like an NFL receiver when you see him. Kind of reminds you of Lawrence Cager, that from one summer to the next, or one winter to the next, you looked at Lawrence Cager and you say, wow, this guy looks like an NFL receiver. Ended up actually becoming an NFL tight end. I think Horton's got more talent than Cager. He definitely looks like an NFL type guy. Needs to be more consistent with his hands, but he's trending in the right direction. On the defensive end, I would have to say Jaden Harris. I think he's the one that's going to be a real solid safety for you. Solid tackler, solid speed, good head on his shoulders. James Lewis to me is the comp if he maximizes his potential, and he's the guy I'd watch on defense.
Offensively, I'm going to go with one that I don't think a lot of people would consider as in this question, but how about Francis Mauanoa? Because everyone, he freshman All-American season, everyone kind of looks at him like he had no flaws, but he wasn't perfect last year. I think he's going to I think he's going to take a huge jump because that's just in his nature, the worker that he is. And again, having to have this year to adjust completely to the college level, I think he's going to cement himself, as a legitimate All-American, not just freshman All-American last year, a legitimate All-American at the national level here. And then defensively, it's a tough one. How about you went with Jaden Harris? That probably would have been mine. But how about Robert Stafford? We didn't see him much last year. I know he got sick in the middle of the season. He lost some weight there. I think it's a big summer for him because we forget that we still have a couple months here before the pads get popping again here in fall camp. A guy like him, I think, could really take the next step, hopefully over the next few months here, get that good weight on. And we keep talking about needing someone else to step up there at corner. He's going to see the field at some point this year, and we're going to need him at some point. I'll go with him because he has the speed, and I know that before the sickness, he had some people excited last year.
Yeah, it's a great one. Let's get Marrero's question here. I want to answer Marrero's latest question. He wants to know, what are your expectations for the Miami baseball team in the transfer portal cycle? So I've been kind of quiet on the Canes baseball portal stuff, probably more than I know, just because they're working. And you don't want to let any cats out of the bag. You want to let them work. Here's what I'll tell you. I can say this with some authority. I expect Miami to be major players in the transfer portal on the baseball side. I expect them to make a major impact. Miami is very aware of what these other schools have done in the portal. Your Dukes, your Clemsons, your Texas A&Ms, your FSUs. I think Miami is going to be a major player in the portal, and I expect the personnel to be significantly improved going into next year. Look, whether JD's the coach, that's where you go to the Canes Insight message boards. We got the busiest Canes community for baseball talk on the planet, as well as football talk and basketball. Go to the Canes Insight baseball message boards if you're not there. But I expect Miami to be a major player in the transfer portal for baseball.
Question here from New King God about Markeith Williams. What type of year do you expect from him? I mentioned it, D, when I was at a couple of the media sessions. Just looks it's individual drills, but looks natural, smooth hips. Looks like he has some ability in coverage. I think the thing with him is that you can't expect much in terms of physicality. He's not going to be someone getting downhill very much, right? Not to say that he can't become a pretty consistent tackler, but I think he's someone who, as a deep safety, can probably make some plays for this team.
Yeah, and I think the arrow's pointing up. He had a very good spring, which you hope is his third year in the program. But I heard spring, and I saw him with my eyes, but also talking to people, because safety is a position you really want to kind of know. You want to talk to people that are closer to it, because you might see one thing, but you don't know what people's assignments are, et cetera. But I heard he had a very good spring, trending in the right direction in terms of all the things he's doing. He's someone with a lot of talent. He's the most similar to Mish Powell, who's the starting safety, in that Marquise Williams probably could play corner if you needed him to. He's that athletic. He has that ability to run and cover and the smooth hips. He's also a ball hawk, was a very productive interception guy in high school in the Orlando area. Cam Kitchens always thought this guy had a lot of talent. Kind of as a protege. Just needs to be consistent. Go stick to the process, have a very good summer, get his strength and conditioning right. Just again, if he has a very disciplined, good summer, he's someone who will play next year and help this team win.
All right, guys, going to wrap things up here. Appreciate everyone. Thank you, James, for the comment. Appreciate everyone who was on here these last 45 minutes. If you just hopped on recently, you can catch the entire replay of the show immediately available right off the bat. And remember, we talked in the beginning about Jordan Lyle. D had some thoughts about him. He's been on campus for a few weeks now, getting acquainted to things, and exciting prospect there at the running back position.
And we can go a few more minutes. If anyone has any more questions, get them in there. Remember to like and subscribe to this podcast. We're audio and video. So if you're not subscribed on audio, we're on all platforms, Spotify, iTunes, you name it, Apple Music, whatever it is. We're on all that stuff. And then also, of course, on the YouTube channel, we're coming every day, plus instant reactions. We got a baseball show that we're going to record today. If you're a baseball fan, we got the best baseball show going with Javi Salas, giving his thoughts. We'll do a season wrap up today. Like and subscribe. Appreciate you. Kane, Idaho, Marrero, You King God, guys that, always supported the pod. Appreciate you guys. Ulysses, everybody that's, that listens every day and supports. Let's see here. D. Briz has a question. The king of the space here. He wants to know, hey guys, possible for Pruitt to play some safety? I don't think so. I think Pruitt, first of all, Bobby Pruitt, the linebacker out of Mobile, Alabama, true freshman, game here in spring. Number one, unbelievable spring. From what I've seen and from talking to people, he's a potential 3-and-out guy, meaning NFL, that talented. He's put on weight, which is good. I think with the way he's put on weight, how comfortable he was at linebacker, he plays that strong side linebacker, which is sort of that nickel linebacker, which we've talked about in podcasts. If you want to check out our football school episode with Coach Zuck, he really breaks down that position and what that linebacker position is required to do and how it's evolved over the years. So he plays that, but that's really only 15% of the snaps. He's also taken a lot of snaps inside, more of a traditional linebacker, just because he's so good. You got to get him on the field. So you saw that throughout spring, and I think that's going to continue as he gets more acclimated, gains more weight, et cetera. So I think with Pruitt, it's going to be he's those safety days. Obviously, he still has that athleticism and those instincts, but I think he's going to be much more of a true linebacker than any kind of safety.
Question from Mark McSee: will Zion Nelson be a factor this year?
Listen, he's still on the team. I saw him practice with my own two eyes. He had limited snaps where he was able to play full go, often one-on-ones, team, etc. That'll be an ongoing evaluation, health-wise and everything else. Obviously, you can get him. It's a bonus because he was a very good player when he was healthy, and he's huge these days. I mean, he's so far removed from the 240-pound guy that showed up on campus. He's a big, big dude. It's not out of the cards, or else he'd be retired yet or transferred, but he's here. So,
is Sam Brown a starter versus Florida?
Yes. But really, to me, it's 4 receivers. They're going to be interchangeable. Sam Brown, Isaiah Horton, Restrepo, George. I'll say there's 4 and then a drop off. So if you're trying to get into that group, those are the 4 you need to crack as opposed to like 3 and then people pushing up. I think those 4 are the guys, and you're trying to push up into that group. You got a question here from No Smoke I want to get to. Who's also a day one supporter. Will Dawson incorporate any of the Miami Dolphins stuff? They're down the street. It's funny. So I always get mad when we signed. This is going a little tangent. When we signed Elijah Lofter, we got a commitment. There were people on the board saying, "Oh, we're getting a full." Because I said he should be a fullback, not a exclusive fullback, but I think he can give you that. And people on the board were like, "Oh, you're going back to the Stone Age. Mario's a caveman. Blah blah blah. Fullback." Who uses the fullback more than the Miami Dolphins with Alec Ingold? And Alec Ingold's not nearly as versatile as Elijah Lofton. Elijah Lofton can run like a tailback. He can go out and run routes like a receiver. And of course he can block. So I think I would love to see some of that stuff with Elijah Lofton in the Alec Ingold role. Chris Johnson is a guy that certainly can get up north and south and kill you with his speed. Chris Johnson is really their type of back, as you've seen with Jalen Wright, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, et cetera. Track guys. Chris Johnson fits in that mold. And of course, you have some fast receivers. So you see some of the personnel similarities. Ward likes to get rid of the fast, like Tua has that kind of accuracy. I think the offense that I hear most about, and this is from Cristobal. People assume Cristobal wants to be running a 1970s offense. Cristobal's favorite offense, from what I understand, is actually that Sean McVay Los Angeles Rams offense, which there's some similarities to what McDaniel does in Miami Dolphins. But if you're talking about NFL offenses that I think you might see bits of, and we saw some of it, we had Coach Zuck breaking this down when he talked about some of the stuff we do in terms of running duo, which is a gap scheme run where sometimes the latest trend is to use your receiver as an extra blocker in the play, in the box. He mentioned we did some of that stuff with Xavier Restrepo. See that Rams influence and the stuff they do with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. That really, I'm sure Dawson is the offensive coordinator, but I can tell you Mario Cristobal loves that Rams offense. And that's something he's borrowed from and that Dawson's borrowed from as well.
All right, D. Well, we'll be back tomorrow. We have a couple interviews. Justin Green's asked this question a couple times. We'll get to him asking about left guard.
Yeah. Prediction. This all up in the air. I broke this down. We did a really deep dive on left guard on yesterday's podcast. Check that out if you haven't, where we just went through some of the questions coming out of spring, left guard being the first one. The way I'll handicap it is this. The one possibility is someone really emerges a tackle, whether it's a Markel Bell, a Matt McCoy, or someone else, Kinsler, and then moves a Mawanoa or Rivers, more likely Mawanoa, I think, to guard. That's one possibility, but I'd say that's trickier because you're moving a freshman All-America off tackle. I think it might be the best ultimately for the team, but let's put that to the side for now. You're really talking about the two leading candidates coming out of spring, Matt McCoy and Okunlola. I would say Matt McCoy of those two, despite being a lower rated player at high school, is actually the more twitchy athletic player, more athletic upside. You're talking about NFL and stuff like that. He's a former tight end who had a huge growth spurt. He's really, really athletic. Go back and watch some of the old games from last year. He was playing tight end a lot, number 81, played a lot more snaps than people thought because you thought maybe McCormick or another tight end was on the field, and it was number 81, Matt McCoy, as an extra tight end. He's certainly big enough to play guard or tackle, but he's the athletic guy of that crew. You want to see more physicality and meanness from him. Sampson, I really think is better at guard than at tackle because he can use his wrestling to sort of torque guys. You'd like to see more pure power out of him, just knocking guys back, that twitchy power that Francis Mawanoa has so much of. But I think with Okunlola, what he does really well is just watch him seal guys, torque guys. He can also get to the second level pretty quick. He's got quick feet to do that and then do the same thing to the linebackers. So I like him at guard. He came on the podcast last week, had a great interview with him if you want to check it out on the YouTube archives. And he talked about the mentality switch, being more aggressive at guard as opposed to being more patient at tackle. I like him at guard. He'd be my pick if you ask me today, who's the left guard? I'd say Sampson is the starting left guard against Florida, but it could easily be McCoy, or you could see someone move in. And injuries, of course, play a role in all this. Thank you, guys. Appreciate everybody who joins us each and every day and all the folks tuning in today. Stick around. We're on every day. Like and subscribe to the pod. We don't take days off, man. We're always going to be rolling all off season. We'll get you covered this whole visit weekend, all these visit weekends for recruiting. We'll give you the absolute latest there.
Shout out to James, man. Shout out to Rico's Lawn and Pressure Washing Service. How about that?
Oh, yeah. Here, let's get that to you. I'm trying to read it because it's in there. All right. So Rico's Lawn and Pressure Washing Service, lawn care and pressure washing service, 786-525.
6217.
6217.
Let me do your dirty work. I like that.
Let him do your dirty work. It's like this Miami Hurricanes offense. You got plenty of guys to do the dirty work. We're trying to find a left guard to do that dirty work. Is it Samson Okunlola? We will find out. But when it comes to your dirty work and your lawn care, holler at James Smith. He'll take care of you.
All right. Go Canes. Appreciate you all for joining us today.
Go Canes.